Grant, welcome to the There we go, and we don't edit Grant, so we're going to keep that in there. So, welcome to the Kofkin Bond podcast. And it's really sad that I can't say my own surname, mate. So
we all have our moments, don't worry.
No, we've known each other for quite some time, and I've been a long time fan of your swimming career. I was about 12 years ahead of you, and nowhere near as good. Always wanted to be though, but. Always been a fan, watched your swimming career, and also your corporate career as well. So it's been really great getting to know you on a personal level and attending concerts with you in LA and having lots of fun and a few beers and lots of meals together and things like that as well. So it's been wonderful getting to know you. But today we're actually going to, for our guests, most of our guests will know you as Grant Hackett, the 3-time Olympic gold medalist, and your feats in the pool, obviously, and there's some of the talks that I've seen you give have been extraordinary, but they also don't necessarily know about Grant Hackett, life after swimming. The gent who's sitting here in front of me in his suit and tie. So it's your business career, which has also been exceptional as well. Went into banking and. You're now the CEO of, or have been for 5 years, of the listed company Generation. What's the acronym?
GDG, Generation Development Group, which is the parent of Generation
Life, which a lot of my clients actually invested in as well. So thank you for coming today. And what we're going to talk about is that transition, from the swimming and being not an elite athlete, but actually the greatest in the world, into that business life and that transition across. I've often spoken about, and my clients have heard me speak in the past, that transitioning, that you can be a natural, which is great, but being a natural doesn't make you the greatest in the world. You still actually have to work hard and hard and hard. Being a natural is a start, obviously, but it's the hard work that actually gets you there, and I think that's the same in business as well. Would that be a fair call?
Absolutely. It's funny, all the athletes that people see as the most talented, funnily enough, are the most hardworking as well. So,
absolutely.
I've been lucky enough to train with Michael Phelps.
I remember you telling the story,
watching those guys train and their application towards what they do. Sure, they're big, they're flexible. They were doing it from a very young age.
Yeah.
But it was unequivocal. It was the hard work and focus and visions that they had for their careers that actually drove them to the levels that they achieved, where most people would look at them and say, oh, they're just so talented, aren't they? And often enough, when someone's been doing something for long enough and is exceptionally good at it, they do make it look easy. It's like watching Usain Bolt run. Yeah. But the amount of times a guy would have thrown up during a training session would be unheard of. So it's more the hard work. And I don't think I was probably even as talented as those athletes. I can't complain. I'm 6'6" and had a lung capacity that was 160% above what it should have been, and all these sort of unique
when
things.
Both your lungs were working.
When
touch
they
on
were
that in
both working.
Yeah.
So I was probably lucky I had a bit of extra capacity for that race. Yeah. But I know it's the discipline, the hard work, the consistency, and the boring stuff that actually creates any sort of greatness or any good results. So I've definitely just applied that in my business career. So that's probably the one skill that I've learnt, and I truly understand it as well. I know when I'm kidding myself, when I think I'm applying myself, when I'm really not. Or I know when I'm truly dedicated and executing well. So that's probably the unique insight that I have, given that I got to that level in sport.
Sometimes, as a father, that can be annoying to our children.
It can be.
Yeah, it can be.
It can be annoying to a lot of other people. They want to be good, and you give them a reality check, and they don't like it.
Yes, I know. It's to my two sons who are 28 and 26. There's been the odd occasion where they said, "Dad, I'm just not interested." But it's. Now, you live here in Melbourne now, but you did grow up on the Gold Coast. Yeah. When did you know? And actually, I remember first following your brother in surf lifesaving, older brother. When did you realise, at a young age, and what was it like growing up in the Gold Coast? And when did you realise that, there's this opportunity in swimming where you had that, not just potential to be great, but that potential to be an Olympian?
I think I was always pretty competitive, so I'm quite a relaxed individual, so it doesn't come across like that, but my mindset is highly, highly competitive, and I will do whatever I can within my power to get the result that I'm looking for. And I'm not a person who gives up very easily. I think I don't even know when to give up, to be honest, sometimes, perhaps when I should. But for me, my mum had cancer in between us, so it was almost a 7-year gap. So I was born on the Gold Coast. Dad was a detective, so he got moved around Queensland quite a bit. So we started swimming in far north Queensland, up in Innisfail. It's because my brother actually got beaten by 2 girls in a surf race, and he wanted to do swimming lessons, and Mum and Dad hadn't even thought of aquatics before that. So he started doing the surf life-saving bit, and he was swimming for that. Within 6 months was state surf champion, funnily enough, and I was kind of going up and down the public lane. Eventually Dad got transferred back to Brisbane, and we lived on the Gold Coast, and then I really started swimming probably seriously from the age of 5 or 6, just because that was a sport that we were doing within the family. And from there, I think, playing a couple of other sports, doing the surf life-saving bit, which I loved, and the Uncle Toby's Super Series was just so big in the 90s. Those guys were real rock stars. So
Guy Leach is actually a good mate of mine. Yeah.
And he was one of the big rock stars through that period, along with Trevor Hendy and.
Well, yeah, as he always tell you, it was good to be great, but he said it was great to be good looking too.
Yeah. He still is. He still is.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's a ridiculously good looking guy.
He is.
So,
yes.
Anyway, we all want to look like Leachy, trust me.
Yeah.
And be an exceptional athlete. I mean, the guy won several Coolangatta golds. Like he's
an amazing athlete.
He's phenomenal. So, and he's always been so extremely fit. But so I was doing that sport, and then rugby league. I was playing that, being up in Queensland, and there was a critical moment in '93 where one Antonio Semirantz read out Sydney. Sydney, and I thought to myself, geez, I'd love to go to a home Olympics. I always admired the Olympics.
So how old were you then?
13.
13, yeah.
And it was funny, I made a decision at that very point that I didn't want to just go to the Olympics in 2000, I wanted to win.
Yeah.
And I did, a fair bit about that. I researched Kieran Perkins's times, who was, the event I was doing was the 1500 metre freestyle, and the rich history I really loved in Australia. And it was actually our most gold medal race in Olympic history across any sport, male or female. So
I still remember reading about Murray Rose.
Yeah. Andrew Boyd Charlton. They went to the ABC pool in Sydney. Why is it named that? He's a 1500 metre swimmer. You got John Conrad. Stephen Holland. You had Glenn Houseman, Daniel Kowalski. So you had all these amazing athletes over the last century in that race. And so for me, that was something that really intrigued me. And also, it was like the 4-minute mile, but it was almost harder than the 4-minute mile was the 15-minute barrier for the 1500 metre freestyle, because a guy named Vladimir Selnikov broke that in 1980. I think he went 14 minutes 53 around. He eventually got that record down to. But by the time I got to breaking 15 minutes, only 4 people before me, almost over 20 years, had been able to do it.
Yeah.
So, and 3 of those were Australian. Actually, it might have been 5. I think 3 of those were Australian, with Kowalski, Houseman, Perkins, Vladimir Selnikov, and I think there was a French swimmer as well, if my memory serves me correct. So, that was kind of the big milestone in the race. But I think for me, 13 was really that critical moment where I don't think I even knew I could win or not win, or go to Olympics or not go to Olympics. I didn't think about the failure part of it. I just thought about what I wanted to do, and then I didn't kid myself. I knew it was going to be very difficult, and I just put everything in place to do it. I didn't ever think I would fail at it. I know that sounds weird. Don't get me wrong, when I got there, and when I've been going through the years before it, when you actually are at that level, of course you question yourself probably more at that point in time, because you recognize the things that can go wrong. But as a young kid, I just thought to myself, well, I've just got to train really hard, and I'll get there and I'll do it.
But I remember having this chat with you, I think we were in LA when I was having this chat with you, that it's actually a mindset that, talking to an American Olympians versus, say, some Australian Olympians beside yourself that I know more track and field, where a lot of the Australian athletes, their goal has been to qualify for the Olympics, whereas you talk to an American, their goal is to win an Olympic gold medal, not to qualify for the Olympics. So qualifying for the Olympics is just part of the thing. But you said you weren't there to qualify for the Sydney Olympics. You were there to win an Olympic gold medal.
I think when you come from a nation that can really dominate, like the US, it's easy to have that mindset. When you come from a small country from Australia, and we don't necessarily have the plethora of gold medals that you see from the US, I think you are the underdog, and I think we carry that probably a little bit too much, where we should maybe, think.
But we aren't in swimming.
No, and we aren't in many other things.
My father would always say that, when the Olympics are on, he said, we enjoy the first week.
Yeah.
We do as Australians, enjoy the first week.
And we almost question ourselves, I think, too much in other sports. Where, well, we can do it in swimming, but we could never do it over here or over here, and I don't believe
we
that.
have the same population for swimmers as what we do for athletes and all the rest of it. So it's
correct. And so for me, I think one of the reasons that there was a strong sense of self-belief is because I saw Kieran Perkins do it the year before and dominate as well. Not only did he win, he won by a huge margin. Glenn Housman, another Australian, got second, so we got first and second, and then he broke the world record.
I remember it was the opposite in the Commonwealth Games just before that, 2 years before, wasn't it? With Glenn Housman.
In 1991, Kieran was 16. Glenn Housman won that in 14 minutes 55. Kieran broke 15 minutes though as a 16-year-old and went 14:58, which was incredible. So that was quite a remarkable result.
And he got the silver. That was the Commonwealth Games, wasn't it? Yeah.
Correct. And then it was always going to be Glenn Housman's opportunity in 92, but then Kieran came along. Then the following year they had the World Championships in between the Commonwealth Games and the Olympics, and he finished second, broke the world record, but finished second. A guy named Jörg Hoffmann, a big German guy, who's about 6'8", massive guy, beat him. Since said that he was on drugs in the sport to beat Kieran. They came down to a sprint the last lap. And then the next year, I think Kieran broke the world record 2 times that year. Like he was hungry to beat Jörg. And so he went 14 minutes 48 at the Olympic trials, and then went to the Olympics and went 14 minutes 43.44 to be exact, and won by about 25 metres. And I think Glenn Housman finished second in 40 minutes 55. So as you can see, I study everything because I believe the only way you can achieve your goal is if you really break it down. And
Well, I remember you said that in one of your talks, that you would actually look at what time Kieran Perkins did at a certain age, and you're at that age, and you'd say, wow, I'm 5 seconds behind, which in a swimming pool
it's a long way.
It's actually a long way.
It's like running, 10 seconds flat versus 9.8. It doesn't seem like much time, but it is.
It's about 10 meters.
Correct. So in any sport, the margins of error, the more you get to the top, become smaller and smaller. I mean, I have 3 Olympic silver medals, I think over a distance of about 24 minutes of swimming, that are by about 1 second or less. So those 3 silvers could be 3 golds. So I could be sitting here with a extra second, a 0.1, a 0.2, literally here, as a 6-time gold medalist, doing distance events, which obviously you don't get as many opportunities as a Phelps or a Thorpe to be able to do all the relays and stuff like that. So I think for me, through those formative years, seeing Kieran do so well did give me a sense of self-belief that as an Aussie, well, we can do it. And then I looked at the rich history in the race. So it's really important that we have great athletes, because no one did a survey on me and said, oh, who's inspired by that or not? But that was hugely inspiring, and also creates that sense of belief that from this country that you can do that.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? You get to Sydney.
Yeah.
So it's you're in Sydney. You've qualified. You win that first Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
It's been your dream from a 13-year-old. You go into that race. It's always been your dream.
Yeah.
You certainly know you've got a shot.
Yeah.
The world knows you've got a shot.
Yeah.
There's a sense of expectation. Us Australians are very good at lifting people up, then cutting people down. You do have that tall poppy syndrome, and you are tall. You do stand out, Grant. So it's
that's my fault.
Yeah. So it's when you touched that wall and realised you'd won that gold medal.
Yeah.
Tell me about that feeling.
It's funny, I remember, I can think of it right now, just sort of 25 metres to go. I was next to Kieran Perkins, so here's my hero turned my rival, and I had a fair gap on him by about 5 seconds. And I remember actually sitting up and sitting on the yellow touchpad, and it came in, touched the wall, and if you probably look at the footage, you can see me. I actually look at the diving scoreboard, not the main scoreboard of the pool, because I had this thought as I touched, where I thought, what happens if someone in lane 8 I didn't see? So I was like, saw my name, lane 3, Grant Hackett 1, okay, and then I sort of turned around and just celebrated. So it was an amazing moment. The funniest thing too, like there was a sea of about 20,000 people around a little 50-meter pool. And I spotted my mum and dad straight away. So that as I turned around, like, it was a bit bizarre. So whether it was because they were probably going more nuts than anybody else, but it was such a nice moment, because then Kieran came in second. Kieran wasn't overly friendly for me for the 4 years before that we're on the team together, because I was undefeated for 4 years straight coming into the Olympics, and he leant over the lane rope after finishing second. Fastest time he'd actually swum since he broke the world record, so it was his fastest swim in 6 years, and said, "You deserve this." So I never forgot that. Like, because the guy literally, I think he said more to me, or probably doubled the amount of words that he'd ever exchanged to me in 4 years just in that moment. So that was really nice. And subsequently we're good friends now. He's also a CEO.
He is,
incredibly bright guy, and was an amazing athlete. I think people did really appreciate at the time how good he was, but he was the trailblazer in Australian swimming that put us back on the map again.
Can I ask? It's I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily suffer from adrenaline rushes, which can be the bane of people's life, because they think I'm just not interested. But you're about to get on you're being called out. So there's you're in the change rooms. You got 7 other blokes in there who are all gunning after you. From that perspective, you're the one who's been undefeated, and this is the race they all want you to lose for the first time in 4 years. So it's what thoughts are going through your head at that stage? What are you trying to block out? Is your heart rate racing? How are you keeping it all under control before you get out there and stand on the blocks? You're a young fella, you've been dreaming of this for a long time.
It was, I just turned 20, and here I was, in the village. There's Muhammad Ali that walks past.
But you haven't been partying. We're all meant to be partying at that age. And not remembering what we did the night before.
Completely focused. Barely would drink and do anything like that. So, for me, I think, you train for many years to be able to control your emotions at that moment. So I think it's almost like being a SAS or a Navy SEAL. Like, you literally spend so many hours each day. Like, I would train over 6 hours per day, and I've been doing that from a very young age for that moment. So I knew what I needed to do. It's whether you have the composure to be able to have the discipline to do it. So for me, before that race in particular, I should have medalled in the 200 and 400. I was world record on the 200 the year before. I was a finalist, but not a medalist in those races in Sydney. And, we won a gold in the relay, but I wanted my individual gold. That was the big one. And for me, I think I remember just having probably 3 things I was saying to myself. You can do it. You want to do it. Go out and do it. And I would repeat sort of mantras like that in my head. So as soon as your mind starts deviating, I think the difference between a good or a great athlete can be when things go a little bit sideways. Do you know how to control yourself and bring yourself back to the middle and center yourself, or do you get too much in your head? And so I think I always had that ability. I saw, it was funny, Ian Thorpe rarely saw things get to him. He was the sort of guy when he would compete, he wouldn't shut up. Like, I needed a bit of time to focus, but he'd be in the marching area just talking. I'm like, dude, we're about to swim an Olympic final or a world championship final. Can you just be quiet?
I don't want to talk.
And it was funny. I remember we sat next to each other on the bus on the way down for the men's 200 meter freestyle just a few nights before this race, and he wasn't saying anything, and I was really worried. And the night before, Peter van den Hoogenband had broken the world record in semi-final number 1. Then in semi-final number 2, he went to break it, but he equaled it. They actually equaled the world record. And so that rattled him. He was only a 17-year-old kid, let's not forget. And I remember sitting on the bus and I was like, oh, this is not good. And you watch Ian's race there, he goes out way too hard. He's got this amazing kick, these amazing legs. Went out way too hard, as you see him over kick, and Peter beat him in the last lap. Now, Ian didn't forget that. So Ian went to the World Championships the following year, this was 9 months later, and they turned on the last wall together. And Ian came home faster in the men's 200 meter freestyle than anybody did in the 100 meter freestyle.
Wow.
Broke that world record by 1.3 seconds that was done at the Olympics.
I think Gary Hall got a smack like that of him as well on the 4x100.
He did a couple of nights before that at the Olympics. So it is funny, different people have different ways of centering themselves. So whilst one person doesn't need to talk or might use music or whatever it might be, another person might love a chat. So, and I've always tried to pick that up against people that I've seen be great at stuff and seen them in great moments. And that's why I remember these things so candidly, because I thought to myself, what works for me? And I'm still refining that. What works for me in good times, bad times, pivotal moments, high pressure moments. And I'm pretty good at it, but I'm still curious as to what more I could do to improve.
Yeah. So it's interesting you do that, because one of the things that I've learned through sport, through business, is observation of everything going on around you. Actually being able to read what other people do, and you see it in a room where someone goes like that and then they don't say anything. They want to talk.
Yeah.
Or they look up, they've had a question, but it hasn't come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
And to be able to just stop the room and say, sorry, Grant, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Just having those observations. And even my son, I will say, is an over-passionate Essendon football supporter like me. He's not as optimistic as I am. Every year we're going to win the flag. But he's there, and you can just see there's the few odd players, I won't name them, but you can just see they make that odd mistake early on, and I've just take him off.
Yeah.
Don't have them. They just lose it. Their head's down, and they've lost it. Just take them off. They're just not going to. The rest of the game, they're just going to be down on themselves.
I see it in athletes all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny that exact behaviour. In our team, and I'm very fortunate because I've been trained to do this, is I had to swim so many events. I would swim up to 6 events at a competition, which was a lot, particularly for an endurance
Especially when you're into relays as well.
It's not like this, I'm doing 3, 1,500 metre butterfly or anything like that. I just did the 2, the 4, the 8, the 15, sometimes the 4x2.
The qualifying for the final.
Semis, all that sort of stuff. So you can have a bad race in there somewhere. You could have one where it just didn't go well, and we would always have. That was yesterday, now we've got to focus. So as soon as that bad race would happen, if you had more events, you had to just reset yourself and refocus very, very quickly. And I learned to do that at many international competitions over many, many years, because you would have your ups and downs throughout the course of the week, or even breaking a world record one night, then you've got a media conference, a drug test, a cool down, a massage, physio. You get back after midnight, but you've got to wake up for heats the next morning and another pretty major race probably for you. So, even in the bigger moments where things are going well, like to be able to have that sense of control and focus. So I always see that in people like Djokovic. When you watch him play tennis, particularly when he was at his best, you think, geez, he's not looking good. He's not looking good. Then all of a sudden it just turns a corner and you're like, wow. He's just won the next sort of five games in a row, and you see that in all the great athletes. When they go down, they don't stay there for too long, because everyone goes down. Like in life, everyone goes down. Everyone goes on the bottom part of that, but they have this uncanny ability to be able to shift their focus onto the things that they need to do in order to get back up. And so their transition time from being down, not executing well, to getting back to executing well is much shorter than what probably most people is. I think that's their real ability around their greatness.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about in footy. Someone's missed a simple mark or a kick right in front of the posts. That rattles them for the next, there's 60 minutes left in a game. Then that's not going to work.
No.
They've got 30 seconds to turn that head sort of mindset around and get their head right and really focus again. And actually, what you start doing is not focusing on what outcome you want, but the next step in the process. So for me, even when I would walk out behind the blocks, people go, what do you think about behind the blocks? I'm like, gun. That is literally just going over my head, because I just want to get a good start.
Yep.
So I'm just waiting for the gun to go, and that's my focus. Like, I know my race plan, I know what I need to do. It doesn't always play out the way you want to, so there's areas where you've got to adjust and not get too rattled, and then again focus and execute. But I think that time to being down, to getting yourself back into where you need to be, it is micro steps, and you've got to focus just on the next micro step, and then get it and just move yourself away from that very quickly.
Well, I actually used one of the stories you gave earlier, where somebody said, there's because I was a 1500 freestyle and a 1500 butterfly, and they said, well, you could never miss a start. And I said, well, I was lucky because I had very quick reaction times off the blocks. And they said, well, somebody who's swimming a 1500, if they slightly missed a start. And I said, tell that to Grant Hackett, who's got 3 silver medals, by less than a second. No, I think I said by less than half a second, or at, combined time. So it's tell him, if he missed that start, so, and he's got a silver medal. So it's that's actually a magnificent segue of going into the Athens Olympics.
Yeah.
So we'll just use that as a segue. We spoke about, a lot of people going into the Athens Olympics say you were off your game. They didn't necessarily know what was wrong, but you were off your game, but for a particular reason. We spoke about your lung capacity before and things like that, but do you want to talk about going into Athens and, it's... you could say you didn't have the best preparation, but do you want to tell that story? But you still did pretty well.
Yeah,
in the end, considering all, but if you let people know their story and what happened.
Yeah, no, it was a very tough situation, that one, because at the start of the year I was training so well, and not only do I
competing well.
Yeah, not only do I write down my times, but I write down my behaviours that I want to achieve for the year. So for me, it was about winning 3 gold medals at that Olympics. I was going to do everything right, bed on time, not miss a training session, all that sort of stuff. No drinking, nothing that would get in the way of trying to, get those 3 gold medals. And so very early on in the year, I ended up getting a bit sick, but I didn't miss a training session. And I kept doing, this sort of 15, 16K a day, 6 days a week that I was doing. And that infection went to pneumonia, and very, very bad pneumonia that put me in hospital for 5 days, just a few weeks out from the Olympic trials. So for me, the doctor, after 5 days in there, when I was getting discharged, said, the specialist said, look, you've got 2 choices here. I'll give you medication to suppress the infection, but you need probably, 4 to 8 weeks off. And you might not have scar tissue there, because I was covered. Like, if you looked at my x-ray, I was covered in mucus on my lungs. And he goes, but even though you're young, I'm not sure you'll fully heal around that. So I was like, okay, I've trained myself into a really bad corner here. Anyway, I said, well, can you just give me my antibiotics so I can go training? And so I literally left the hospital and I went to the pool. I didn't even go home. So, because I've been out for 5 days. I had the Olympic trials next month. So for me, I got to the Olympic trials. I qualified for all my races. I still didn't miss any training sessions. I still trained very hard and very well. I went through 17 courses of antibiotics from the Olympic trials to the Olympics. I was coughing up each day a styrofoam cup of yellow mucus, where my physio would express my lungs and whack the sort of side of my chest and around my ribs. So it was a very hard preparation. And I got to the Olympics and, I won a silver medal.
Sounds a bit sadistic.
It does,
yeah,
it does. But you don't have a choice. This is the
yeah.
thing. Like, people love to have excuses in life. And the Olympics, you don't have an excuse. No one cares. It's once every 4 years.
You can't ring them and say, can you just put it back a couple of months? Is
exactly,
that okay?
Exactly. Yeah. COVID's the only time I've seen them do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a totally, there's no excuse that matters. There's no excuse that matters. You get one day every 4 years. If you aren't there, or something goes wrong, or something bad happens in your life, or you're not healthy, whatever it might be, there's 8 years in between opportunities. Now, careers in professional sport come and go mostly in an 8-year period. So for me, I didn't have a choice. That race was on that day in that year. And I either had to make a choice of missing it or doing it sick. That was my 2 choices. So I was definitely going to choose to do it sick. So when I got to the Olympics, I did the 400 meter freestyle. I lost by 0.1 behind Ian. I left my run a little bit late. It was a very narrow race. We lost the men's 4x2 freestyle relay, first time in 6 years, world record holders, by 0.1 in that. So 2 silver medals. They felt like serious failures for me. And then I got to the men's 1500 meter freestyle, and I qualified 3rd fastest. Couldn't, for the first time in 8 years, I got beaten in a heat. Never been beaten at all, but I got beaten in a heat. I couldn't swim over the top of...
So that was the first time you actually lost a 1500 race in 8 years?
Yeah, including heats. So I'd won everything. So I didn't lose for 11 years straight finals, but that was the first actual race that I lost. And so for me, that was tough because I couldn't swim over the top of him at the end, this guy named Yuri Prilikov. And I thought it was over. Like, I actually didn't think I had a chance after that heat swim because I just felt sick. I was back on antibiotics. And anyway, within the next sort of few hours, I actually pulled my head in and thought to myself, you haven't spent 8 years of your life in the last 4 years getting here just to give up on this opportunity. So I thought to myself, every time I have one of these negative thoughts that I was having, I just said to myself, whatever it takes. And And that's exactly what I said to myself probably 3,000, maybe 4,000 times in the next 24 hours in between that point and the final, which was the following evening. And in lane 6, I had a guy named Larson Jensen, who was a serious rival of mine and finished second a lot to me, saying he was going to beat me as American. This is a serious guy. Like, this guy's a very accomplished athlete. Got an email from him one day. It's not often you see in an email signature the chief and commander of SEAL Team 5. That's what he became after being a 2-time multiple Olympic medalist. He was the chief and commander of SEAL Team 5, so he was a Navy SEAL for 5 or 6 years. Now he's a very successful businessman. Studied, I think it was at USC and Berkeley, and did his MBA at Stanford or Wharton or one of those sort of places. So he's a very, very high achiever. He's breaking the American record that day by 11 seconds. He's having he's doing his best time, having his best race ever. I'm hanging on by a very thin thread.
He sounds like a very goal-driven, determined gent.
Yeah. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the people that you're up against there. Like these very, very serious individuals who know how to focus, know how to execute.
And it's very handy with a gun.
Yeah, exactly. And I was his target. So I also had a guy breaking the British record in lane 4 that day by 12 seconds. These guys were on.
Sounds like you inspired a few people.
Yeah. No, and that had happened. They'd admired me and they'd sort of pushed themselves through to get to that point. They were my real rivals.
Now you know how Kieran felt.
Well, I know it is always tough when someone starts, and I was playing a little bit of defense in that situation, given how sick I was. But I remember turning him to the last 100 metres because he caught right up to me, because I've normally got more speed, because they don't normally get it shorter. Jensen and Davies are caught, but Jensen we turned together at the 1,400 metre mark. I think there was 0.15 between us, so we landed effectively together on the wall. And I got a bit of a fright because I'd never in 8 years been in that situation going into the last 100 metres where I had to race someone to win. Any world champs, Com Games, Olympics, never had that rivalry. And so I always thought, particularly when I broke Kieran Perkins' world record by 7 seconds, came home in a time of 56.8 seconds, which was incredibly quick for a 1,500 metre freestyle, particularly with what I'd done for the last 1,400 metres. Incredibly
quick for a 100 metre freestyle.
And no one had ever come home that fast, and the history of the event, etc. And anyway, I turned, saw him there, and just went, I got worried for a second, and then I actually thought to myself, whatever it takes. I just went straight into my head. I focused on what I needed to do. I just put everything I had from every ancestor that had come before me into that last 100 metres. And I went like 56.3 seconds. So I came home faster than I ever had in a 1,500 metre freestyle because of the rivalry and the desire to get the outcome. And I could barely walk afterwards. It was I'd never felt so awful after a race, and so exhausted. Everyone thought I was crying afterwards. I wasn't crying at all. I was in serious pain. It was pain that was on my face, not tears.
Yeah.
And so, I came back to Australia. Actually got another CAT scan. They said there's a big problem here on your lower left lobe. There's a massive lump, and I just went, oh God, I've done some serious damage by training with this.
Yeah.
And they injected me with iodine, put me back under the CAT scan, came out and said it's all right. And I was like, well, what's the lump? Because I've had 5 million things go through my head in that process. And they said, well, because you've been blocked with mucus for so long on this left side, there's actually no oxygen getting to your lower left lobe. So it's just scrunched up into a ball.
Oh, wow.
That's the lump. It's just your lung. It's in a ball. So
your 160% capacity just went to 100.
It just went down. Like I lost.
So you still won the gold medal as a normal human.
Yeah. That's probably what it was like that day. But it was incredibly tough because my oxygen saturation, obviously, and going into my lungs wasn't always going into my bloodstream. So but I always reflect on things.
And that way, then it wasn't flowing equally into your lungs then either.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the exact science of how it would have worked, but it was not a nice feeling where every time at coffin training you bring up yellow infected mucus, like literally every day. So I mean, swear on my children's lives that every day it would have been for 8.5, 9 months that happened. So it was taught me a lot, but I promised myself I'd never race like that again, because it was the most painful thing that I'd ever done.
But you got that gold.
I got it finally. After 2 very narrow silvers, it was a nice way to finish. And
it was.
sometimes the irony is I actually felt the best I felt in a race was in Beijing, which is the one I lost. I finished second in the 1500 meter freestyle there, but I actually broke the Olympic record in the heat.
Yeah.
And if I did my heat time, I would have won the final. I just had a bad race strategy. But
yeah.
So the irony of the rivalry of Kieran and Sydney and the difficulty of your first games, then the next one being really sick. The last one I was great. I was in great form and I stuffed it up. So it's almost I needed something to go wrong for me to be better.
Let's talk about that transition from sport to business. You go from wearing Speedos every day and stinking of chlorine to suit and tie.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember having to chat to you. You try to avoid the pool as much as possible nowadays. So it's you're on the rowing machine more than anything.
That's right.
So it's I mean, you still keep very fit and healthy, but it's the what was that transition like? And you know, did you always know that you were going to transition into the corporate life?
Always. Even before I was a professional athlete, I always knew I wanted a career in finance in particular. I love finance. I've been trading shares as a teenager. So it's probably fair to say I was more interested in business than actually the sport of swimming, even through those years. So I always took a keen interest in anything commerce related, people being successful in business. The nice thing about sport is I got to meet so many businessmen that were super successful or CEOs that were successful, and I got to learn off them. So, my dad always said as an athlete, you retire to something, not from something, because you got to be young and you just can't be in the exit lounge for the next 50 years. You got to have purpose. And, it's not about money. It's not about the financial result. Those things are nice, but they're ancillary benefits of a successful life. A successful life is one that's built with purpose and having meaningful people into it. And I think you realize those things more as you get older. So I had really good guidance from mum and dad, and I had a real desire to want to go into business. Now, the confronting thing on day one of business after being a world champion for 13 years and winning multiple Olympics and all that sort of stuff is that you go from being, I don't know, the global CEO of what you're doing all of a sudden into being not the best at the table on a Monday morning in Collins Street. So that's confronting.
But everyone still recognises you.
That's the hard part. Everyone has these expectations on you. Just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at other things. And that's the reality. Sometimes you're even worse at other things because you've been so focused on one thing. So, so for me, I actually started thinking, well, what did I do in those formative years as an athlete? I didn't think about when I was good and I'd made it. I think, what did I do to make it? When people questioned me, said I wasn't that good, then you have your ups and downs, how do I put my goals on the wall? No one knows who you are, no one cares who you are. So, and I just thought, okay, what was my mindset then? Because I've got to get back to that mindset in this field. And that's what I did. And I think probably within 2 years after that, I was in a leadership position. I was doing pretty well for myself. It was, I was working there 5 days a week in banking, but it was probably less than 20% of my income because I still had so much sponsorship and other things going on. But for me, I knew it was my future. It's what I wanted to do. But it definitely took some time to work out, okay, what are the lessons from sport? How do I use the skills? And I didn't realize how many skills I'd actually built there to be successful. Because when I came into the business world, I saw how many people were just plodding along, kidding themselves that they were going to actually get the outcome that they wanted versus the behaviors that they had. So I actually, the more I sort of understood the skill of what needed to be done in that field, combined with the behavioral elements and the focus and how to deal with the pressure and work with people and all the things that you need to do as a good athlete, I eventually was able to combine those together. And I think that's what probably created opportunities for me moving forward.
I think, though, one of the skill sets I've seen is that you are able to put the skill set of your discipline through sport, not just from an individual basis of your discipline in your job, but actually build a disciplined team around you. And I saw that in Generation Life itself, the team that you were able to build. And I'd like you to actually tell the story of when you were first brought into Gen Life. It was it was born out of Ostock Brokers, but it's how it was tiny when you were when first brought across, and how it's built into the powerhouse that it actually is today. And we're very proud to actually be associated and partner with you guys and to use you guys as well. But it's you you've actually built a really high performing team, and you know, and I think that's one of the major focuses. And you know, Felipe, another swimmer, you know, so it's a 400 swimmer. You know,
he's the only former swimmer I think I would work with. There's probably actually not mine. There's a couple, but I always knew Felipe had a special skill in business and with people too.
Oh, he's a lovely guy. You know, so the handwritten note he put on that, but it was. The handwritten note, you could see that he had actually done a bit of research, and it was special.
Yeah,
you know. So, but I think though the approach that you've actually brought into the leadership, but you can actually see that in the team you've actually built is a high performing team. And you gave an example in one of your talks once about it's like a relay team where you can have. You know, a team of 4 and you've got 3 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10s who all have the potential to win a gold or a silver medal, and you've got that 1 4 out of 10 who's still the 4th best swimmer in that event in Australia, but might be the 32nd ranked swimmer in the world. You know, so but you talk about that in your team, especially in the sales team as an example. But how is it that you build that and those characteristics, hire those people, get those people to be the best that they can possibly be as well, and get that out of them?
I think one thing I was fortunate about, if people see the sport of swimming as an individual sport, it only is upon execution. So everything else is team orientated. You're a part of a big team of 41 athletes, both male, both female, 36 staff, you know, coaches, managers, physiologists, massage, physio, all that sort of stuff. I was fortunate enough to be captain of that team and captain throughout the Olympics. And the one thing I knew about myself is that I really love seeing other people actually do well. I love people seeing them, you know, do better than what they thought they could do. That to me is a real win. And so I don't think all, you know, athletes are probably like that. So some really good athletes probably aren't good leaders because they're just so focused on themselves they forget about other people. And it was funny, I remember getting that captaincy role in 2005, actually after the the lung issue, and my coach was super worried. He's like, you got to put too much time and energy into everyone else. I know you like to do that. It might impact your performance. And it was funny. I actually I did put a lot of time and effort into everyone else, and it was sincere. It was genuine. I wanted to see them do well, and I ended up getting World Swimmer of the Year that year over Michael Phelps. So broke Ian Thorpe's world record. Broke Thorpe's world record in the 800. Yeah. What I realised at that point around leadership is if you genuinely want to see other people do well and you're there to help them, they're going to give you 10 times back what you gave them. Yeah. So, and I think that's what happened to me in that environment. So I learned that about leadership very, very quickly. It wasn't about, leadership's not about trying to, and you see this in the corporate world quite a bit, you know, stepping on everyone's heads to get to where you want to go. If you can get to a point where everyone actually pushes you up on their hands, you know you've done the right job in leadership. And I think, you know, when I came into Gen Life, and Ozstock, as you said, it was called at the time, it was a 40 mil market cap company. It was very small. We had 24 people. We had a monoline product. We had one product. That was it. It was a good product, but we needed to really build out our sales and marketing function, diversify our product, our investment menu, and really work on quite a few different aspects of that business. Now, if I fast forward from that moment in the 11th of September 2017 when I started to right here in 2025, we're now a ASX top 200 company. We're now close to $2 billion in market capitalization. We've got about 300 staff that work across our business. We're number one in investment bonds, number one in research, number one in managed accounts. So it's been a really, really amazing journey, but we've built it brick by brick. You summarize it there, but it was built brick by brick. There was nothing that I wasn't willing to do myself. And I think the rest of the team sees that. So you develop that loyalty and integrity. The way that we reward the team is consistent. Any reward we say we're going to do, if you achieve X, you always get Y where we work. So there's a lot of integrity around that. And we really did bring in that high performance culture, like that clear definition of what is success, what is failure, what does commitment actually look like around the disciplines day to day. What is the reason that you're here? Let's understand what you're doing here, what you want to do here, what you want to achieve, and let's see if you're up for it. And you know, there's a lot of tough conversations to be able to build that sort of culture, and you have to be willing to get rid of people, and that's not an easy thing to do. I've never enjoyed letting someone go, but I've never hesitated in doing it. And the reason I say that is because I always view, if you've got an objective as a business, one, I'm the custodian of a lot of shareholder money, so absolutely, that comes first. It's not about how I feel. It's about what I need to do for them. And the second part is normally when someone's in a position that's not going well, it's normally not good for them either. So, and they people will often say to me, as a boss, and you've had to fire a lot of people over time, do you worry about their family? Do you worry about their doing? I often say, what about everyone else's family around them? They're not doing their job. Everyone else is actually suffering in that team, in this environment, because of their toxic nature or their lack of performance.
Yeah.
So there's a bigger picture here, and someone's got to take some leadership over that and actually do something. So I've always taken that very seriously, and I always look at the higher purpose of what you're doing, because I'm not going to make it about me feeling bad at myself, because I do. I don't like doing it. It's not fun. But it's necessary in order to do what we set out to achieve and to live by our values. And I think that's what's sort of developed in our DNA over time. That doesn't happen in 5 minutes. That's consistency of behaviour. It's consistency in doing the things you said you were going to do, and delivery of performance. And you've always got to be curious. You've always got to be pushing yourself to the next level. I'm a person, it's great to have achieved that, but I'm very paranoid about performance. That's why I think I won for 11 years straight in that 1500 metre freestyle. I used to debrief like I lost. I never walked away from a race thinking I won, because often when you lose or when you fail, right, like you really get introspective. You look at everything that went wrong, went right. What should I do better? What can I improve on? You do a detailed debrief and you really question yourself. When you win, most people don't. They just move on and they feel good about themselves. I try not to approach it like that, because I know after your greatest success and often becomes your biggest failures. And that's but after your biggest failures, often your greatest successes. So I recognize that. I've seen people in sport do well, then do poorly. I've seen it in business as well when people get ahead of themselves. So yeah, I do. I'm not a good sleeper. I am pretty paranoid about getting things right, jumping on problems.
Oh, my 3 a.m. wake up still many times.
Yeah. And then looking at the next opportunity to be able to grow and taking a few risks around that as well. And we're not always going to get it right, but as I say to people, you got to also have a culture of failing fast too. Can't be afraid to fail.
Yep.
We're not here to play defense. We're here to play offense. We've got to attack, and an attacking team will drop the ball every now and again, and we've got to get things wrong. But let's keep going for it.
I think when you talk with that, I mean, obviously such a goal-driven individual as well, but you see great companies or great athletes and things like that, they fail when they become complacent.
Yeah.
And it's and whether it's great football teams or great organisations and great companies, and we've seen it in the financial services world, without a doubt. It's great companies that are lucky to still be around or aren't around anymore as a result of actually becoming complacent.
10% of the size that they were,
exactly
or the
right.
workforce that they have. Yeah.
And it is really interesting, because having such a successful goal-driven individual as their head, to me, just absolutely makes sense. But as you said, if you take Athens as that example, you went into that race from a health perspective, not at your best, and everybody was gunning for you because you're at the top.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's easier to be gunning to be at the top than it is to actually stay at the top. And from that perspective, especially when physically you're not at your best,
you're vulnerable.
But at the same time, mentally, you had to even be stronger than what you were. So you could have actually really
find a way. Correct.
But and I think that's what you've said as well, is what is the next step? What is the next step? What is the next step? So you're always looking, what do we have to do now to grow? It's not just about sometimes increasing that top line revenue. It's also about what's the next strategy we're going to do, like the announcement of BlackRock taking a stake in you yesterday as an example. The announcement of a new potential say product that's going to come out that is going to compete with with where Australia's going. We are. It's exciting where Australia is. Where
absolutely.
I think I might have been. I've had a conversation with a number of people. I was having a conversation with Felipe over lunch, but Australia, we're going to our first real intergenerational wealth transfer. Now you see it in the US; they're in their fourth. You see the wealth there. The wealth there is just astronomical.
Telephone number stuff.
It is, only to be these guys' age now, Grant. So, when they're 50, it's just going to be so. They'll be the America that we saw, when we were over there. So it's now I'm 56 this year, but geez, I'm still looking forward to the next 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really exciting watching
Yeah.
what this country will actually grow into as well.
Yeah.
And we've got a population of 27 million.
Yeah.
So which will obviously grow over that period of time. So it is exciting, and it's exciting partnering with companies that have leaders like yourself, but partnering with companies that are at the forefront of saying, what can we do to actually make life easier with great investments that actually suit the population growth and where this nation is going.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the keys. Then the reason why, even from the bonds perspective, why we utilise you guys is because you're ahead of everyone else. And I mean in respect to the tax effectiveness of them.
Yeah.
So you actually, for you guys, that's so important.
It is.
And that's why we use you.
Yeah.
So, and it's because that gives our clients the best results. And I think that's one of the keys, but you're ahead of the curve. But I think also too, and I see it in Felipe, I see it in you, and it's actually, and I see it in your share price obviously too, but it's the, for full disclosure, I don't own any of your shares, and I'm really, really sore on that. so I'm looking at it yesterday. But I think though the key is driving forward, you see your sporting acumen has come through into the business acumen as well, and actually is been magnificent. And I see that in all your team members that I have met. I see that go all the way through the organisation too, which I think is magnificent.
I think one of the big things for us is you've always got to have a sense of humility. No matter where you are in life, there's someone above you, someone below you. And I think as I get older, I appreciate that more and more. And that point you made around complacency, and a lot of the businesses that you were kind of referring to that were in financial services and were big, companies, well recognised, well credentialed, sort of lost their way and got complacent around, whether it was around their integrity, whether it was around the people they had in the business, whether it was people not owning what they needed to be and optimize. I always say I want to optimize accountability. I want, every time they were trying to do something, who's responsible for that? Because it's on you, so you're accountable, so don't forget. So if this goes wrong, it's on you. So I realise everything falls on me that goes wrong in the organisation, and inevitably there's things that go wrong. But to your point,
somebody might mess up in your organisation. Your name's in the press. You're the CEO.
Correct. Yeah. It's funny. We when we entered the ASX 200 on the day we entered, we did a quarterly update.
Your little trophy.
No. But the interesting thing it wasn't that much fun. It should have been, because we'd grown from like this mini company into quite a large business, but it had Hackett's Week Start as ASX 200 debut. So my name cops everything, good and bad, and it comes with it. I'm okay with that. I'm used to that. I'm lucky I'm used to it, because I don't think many people would survive that sort of environment too much when it's so public. So I'm fortunate that I've had my ups and downs on that sort of stuff. We had a quarterly update. We had a record across every single product, a significant record. However, because we had an investor pack and a number in one of the channels of our business, that the gap seemed a little bit wide from that number to where it was in that March quarterly update. The market, hammered us. We were down 16% that day. So, I was moving house that day. I was on leave. I thought, business was traveling all right. We had a large piece of business that we'd won, still hasn't come in yet. That was the delta or the difference in the number. So, but it's amazing. Like, things can easily turn. Like, we'd grown over 100% in our share price over the past 12 months to that point in time.
I noticed that yesterday.
Yeah.
Or the day before, actually.
Yeah. And yesterday we announced a significant deal. It went up 8-9%, and it moves around. And I try and not get too hung up on these good or bad things, because they aren't there. Everything's temporary. You learn that when you've gone through good and bad things in life, which I certainly have, both personally and professionally. But you have to be just, clearly focused on your vision, your execution around that, and consistent with that. And it's funny, when the bad things happen, that's the time not to panic. As I said, in our business, people were saying, do this, do that. And I said, no, we're clear on what we're doing. We're going to execute very well. And we know what needs to be done and where we're going. So we just need to, we got some stuff wrong around the way that we're articulating ourselves to the market. We didn't get the messaging right. So what's going in the lessons box right now? So, and that's what we have to do, but we don't need to panic. So that was probably one of the critical things, and probably where I'm good, because I've been through these situations before. And then it's on the other side. Don't have too many high fives, guys. I can't stand that. Like, hubris and thinking you're better than what you are, it actually, it's against my values. Like, I hate it. And I find it it's really distasteful. So it's nice to be good, you know, even when one of my kids say to me, "Oh, Dad,"
it's not very American, is it?
No, it's not. It's
No,
not.
so,
but even
yeah.
when my kids say to me, "I'm going to do this," and I can see they're trying to do it, and I said, "I don't care what you achieve. Just I want you to be a good person."
Yeah,
It's literally what I say. Like, because that comes first. So I think in a business as well, you got to get the fundamentals right first, and then results do follow that. But if you're trying to take shortcuts to get results, if you're trying to lie or misrepresent or not be transparent or, you know, say one thing, do another, all those sorts of things, eventually everything can come undone. So I think you've got to build yourself on the right foundations, and that's been consistent within our business, and I think that's why we've had good growth, and we've got to continue to do those things. That's not a set and forget. It's a wake up, do it today. That's me. Think about it over the weekend, and then come in Monday morning. If I feel good or I feel bad, it doesn't matter. I'm the leader. I have to lead, and keep driving that. So, and until I don't want to do that, or I don't have the energy to do it, then I've got to give it to someone else.
There's a term in here I got from one of my colleagues, but I'll use it for you, Grant. You know, I think as a CEO of a listed company, it's pretty simple. You can't add any mayo to any story.
No.
Simple as that.
No, never.
Yeah.
Never.
If anything, you probably have to understate in some way. Yeah. So it's
you have to be honest, but you have to be conservative in your approach. And it was funny, in some of those figures in the pack, they weren't conservative at all. They were actually stretch numbers. So, and they were pretty crazy. But it was quite funny. The result we actually had over one quarter was a total of 30% of the funds under management of our nearest competitor had ever. We did that in one quarter. That was a bad quarter. So in that one part of our business. So, you know, you can't lose perspective either. But yeah, when you're running a publicly listed company, you are the custodian of people's super fund money, their personal money, a grandma, you know, my auntie who invested into it, and people have put a lot of trust in you and the team that's around you as well. And I do take that very, very seriously. So, and that's probably what I was saying before around getting rid of the people who aren't committed to the business, because that's not about me. It's about all of that's around you that you're representing and that you're the custodian of.
No. Grant, I know you're a very busy man. I know you got off a flight very late last night and came in here and whilst you're on the phone as well. So I sincerely thank you for all your time today and the friendship that we've formed as well. So it's the great thing is I'll never have to swim against you. so
that was a good bit about our age difference.
It's great,
12 years between us.
Absolutely. So it's I remember I did tell you the story in that Pier the Pub with Kieran Perkins. I thought, I'm going to try and sit in his toes as long as possible. I lasted 400 metres.
Good luck. You did well lasting that long.
12:06 for the 1200, tight assisted. But I beat Dan Kowalski that year. What I don't tell people is, he says, geez, you beat Olympic silver medal. So I said, yeah, but he didn't. It was in the Olympics 4 years later. He was only 16 then. But, it's...
He was still very good 4 years before, trust me. Like,
it was 2 seconds, But I do remember that after about 400 metres, I thought, this is the most stupid thing I ever did on Kieran, trying to keep on Kieran's toes, because I thought my shoulders were going to explode. It was just
most people do.
Absolutely stupid, but I still would not have done a 12:06 that day if I didn't at least give it a shot.
Quick time. So.
Well, for a sprint swimmer, I knew I could sprint, but I knew I could sprint forever. Like you guys do.
Exactly.
So that was it. But thanks to Kieran, that's my one story with him. I was tickling his toes for a couple of metres at least. So it was, but that was fun. But thank you for coming in. I sincerely appreciate it. It's been wonderful having you here. It's been a great podcast, and thank you. And for all of our clients, you will now they're one of the many people behind Generation Life as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. Look forward to seeing Green Day together again.
Yes, we will.